What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Crew 2, and in this video I'm going to be taking a look at the creator's DeLorean DMC-12 Outadrift, which was seen in the trailer of episode 2. I do have to admit this vehicle is pretty awesome, so if you do want to unlock this thing, all you have to do is hit level 25 in the motor pass, which is obviously going to be really easy now. So we can add a very cool and unique vehicle to our drift collection, which I do have to admit, this car is a lot better than I thought it was going to be when testing it out. So obviously, similar to other Motor Pass vehicles, you really can't do much of anything to this car, and for this you cannot even take the livery off, which kind of does make sense because, this vehicle is kind of special. You can also add some vanity items to it as well, which is pretty cool. So taking a look at the detail, I would say this entire car is probably going to be an eye catcher because the detail on this thing is honestly pretty incredible. For one, the first thing I actually notice is probably going to be these really nice bright blue rims on the vehicle, which it does kind of give me hope in some way that we could see more rim customization in the future. I'm sure every player probably wants to see that on the Crew 2 as well. And then obviously that really bright blue roll cage in the interior of the vehicle as well, plus the crazy paint and or livery on this. You can even see the color of the engine as well as seen in the trailer obviously there. But I have to admit, guys, I think for being a DeLorean, this car does look pretty awesome. I would like to know your thoughts on DeLoreans in general in the comments below, because I would say a lot of people are probably not big fans of these cars in real life, but I do think they're kind of cool for the most part. Then obviously in the front there, we're going to have the front exit exhaust, which is going to look pretty awesome on this vehicle as well. But I do think a lot of players are probably going to like this car a lot because, well, not only is it going to be free in the Motor Pass, but it's also going to be a pretty dang good car as well. Now, one of the first things I needed to see with the DMC is the fact that can this car do really good right out of the box, just like the 370Z Pro Drift? We all know how this vehicle is basically insanely good with just being stock, so I wanted to see if the DMC could also be really good stock, and to be honest, guys, from the testing I have done, it doesn't look like you really have to tweak this vehicle at all unless you want to. For one, I will most likely leave this car stock as it is right here because I don't really see a point of changing it. This car has really good stability and handling, which I'll get into that more here in a second, but to be honest, I'm kind of surprised how good this vehicle is stock, similar to the 370Z Pro Drift. So if you guys did want to get this vehicle to test it out, you luckily do not have to change much of anything on the settings. So when testing out the DeLorean, I did notice a couple of things about this car that I do want to mention. So obviously being able to jump into any event with a drift vehicle and not have to adjust the settings, I do think are going to be a big plus. But one thing I do want to mention, guys, the DMC does seem to actually grip way too much in some ways. Now I did find myself actually losing my multiplier and or seeing the car slow down way too much unless I was basically redlining it in the other gear that I shouldn't even be in. Because if you did want to shift up to get more speed out of that turn, I did notice the car might actually grip a little too much. Now, this is luckily going to be a very easy thing to fix because all you will have to do is lower the tire grip on the front and rears just a little bit, which funnily enough is a pretty common thing to do with most of the drift cars on the Crew 2 anyway. So I do recommend doing that though because it does seem like the DeLorean does handle very well, but sometimes having a drift car that can grip way too much might not be the best thing because you can find yourself basically gripping too much around the turns and or losing some of your multiplier and or not going up as fast as you should be. So I definitely recommend lowering this car just a little bit to make it grip a little bit less, which I do think is a good idea. And doing that, I would say, will make the DeLorean one of the best drift cars in the game from what I have seen so far. I honestly can't really complain about this vehicle. Now, I'm not going to lie though, when I first saw this car in the trailer, I was honestly kind of confused on why they're bringing a drift DeLorean, but nonetheless, I do have to admit this car does look awesome. I love the rims, I love the overall look of this vehicle, and to my surprise, it's doing a lot better than I honestly thought it was going to. Now, if I had a choice, I would probably pick this vehicle over many of the other drift cars instead of using those because I did find this one to be better. The main reason for this is how this car is going to feel when drifting around the turns with it. We can all agree some of the vehicles are honestly not that great, and I don't really like driving some of the other drift cars in the game either because the stability is just not there. You can almost feel like the car is just not stable and or losing itself on that turn. I feel like the DeLorean is probably going to be top tiered when it comes to that, and well, we definitely know how some of the vehicles on the Crew 2 are not going to be that great in stability. Unfortunately, a lot of the Bugattis are going to be insanely fast, but I did notice that they can't really turn all that great at high speeds, and or they go over the littlest bump and they start to lose themselves a little bit. So going after one of these other vehicles that have better stability and handling, I do think is going to be a great idea. And luckily the DeLorean in this Motor Pass seems to do really good in that aspect. So one thing I also noticed, guys, is the fact this vehicle does feel very similar to the 370Z and even the 350Z from the old Motor Pass as well. I feel like these cars are all going to be great. Now, I personally don't think this vehicle is ever going to come back in the future, and well, I hate to say this, but it would most likely be like that with all the other Motor Pass vehicles as well. A lot of the cars we have seen in the Motor Passes are pretty awesome. Obviously, not all of them are the greatest, but I do think the DeLorean here is going to be one of the better ones we have seen, similar to the Proto Lucky 1. And not only that, but this car is also going to be free, so you can add it to your collection in the Drift class, which you really can never have enough of these vehicles because you can really switch it up more and try out different ones if you would like to. Now, the only unfortunate thing about this is the fact that I don't know if a lot of players are going to pick the DeLorean over like the 370Z Pro Drift because that car is obviously incredible. But I have to admit it, guys, I would highly recommend trying out the DMC because I do think this car is pretty good, and luckily the power is going to be there as well, so the car doesn't struggle like some of them do. You can really feel yourself getting into power with it easier and actually getting around the turns and or holding a drift a lot longer with the car, and even doing that the car can hold a line while drifting as well and doesn't like lose itself around a turn, which I do think is a big issue as well. Even though I would say a lot of players are probably going to want to keep running the 370Z Pro Drift because obviously that car is incredible, I would highly recommend trying out this DeLorean because I did find this car to be really fun to use. It has great power, great handling, great stability, and it also looks really cool as well. So I would recommend leveling up the Motor Pass to at least get this thing unlocked to add it to your collection. But anyway guys, thank you all so much for watching, and let me know your thoughts on this vehicle in the comments below.